That's 2022.
新年快乐!
You can say it in English, that's all.
Huh?
You can say it in English.
Oh, Happy New Year!
Okay.
So the 20% is actually coming from a bunch of polling numbers about how many people own cryptocurrency, for example, in the United States. It's around 17 to 20%. And the other piece here is that almost all of the enterprise adoption of blockchains at all beyond the Chia blockchain have been on private blockchains. And private blockchains are, frankly, a bit of an enigma. They are neither very good at being databases or very good at being blockchains. It is not due to the trilemma. The trilemma is, however, a real limit on what you can do. And it's not just kind of the computer science of the trilemma that's a problem. Here in the United States, the upload speed of a standard home broadband connection is only about 35 megabytes per second. And if you, for example, look at like Solano, they have about only 216 TPS would be possible on the standard kind of actual home cable modem. And you would never want to have that much going because, then your kids are not watching their Netflix and your Zoom's not working. So, the trilemma isn't it. It's really that not a lot of blockchain projects have had to build and create the tools that real businesses need. And so those are things like what Offer Files makes available, things like what the vaults and custody solutions that we're, shipping this year really point out. Because if serious people were going to deploy blockchains, these would have been the showstoppers. Yeah, there absolutely are. We're launching what we've been calling Enterprise Wallet, but it may end up being really called Cloud Wallet. And inside of that, we expect to have things like a tokenization engine that would allow a company to have, 3 people out of 5 be able to issue carbon or issue debt, and then manage that process and kind of end-to-end own it and update it. And then additionally, basic tools to make markets with offer files against those assets are kind of the next major item that has to be there. There's already a decent amount of audit capability, even in the desktop client, but absolutely tools to make it very easy for, Avera to be able to assert to their auditor, this is the amount of carbon we registered, or for a carbon purchaser like Sumitomo, to be able to show their auditor, here's proof of keys on the challenge word you gave me. Here's how you can easily walk the chain and see exactly that, I have control of my keys. Here's the transaction and trace it all the way back, for example, to the Climate Action Data Trust. So in the luxury goods, it's very much creating a digital twin for a luxury good for a couple reasons. The first reason is to really be able to prove authenticity, that you have an actual bag from this brand and it's not a forgery. And along with authenticity and provenance comes the ability to brag. That it's not necessarily for everybody, but the ability to say, hey, digitally, I have this luxury good and I'm the owner of it, and it's pretty cool. But the other thing we were actually talking about with the luxury goods items manufacturers is actually pre-selling luxury goods. In other words, imagine buying the NFT of a watch or a bag that would allow you to take delivery of it anywhere in the world later, and effectively pre-sale those actual items. And then finally, secondary markets. So if you're buying a used luxury bag, that it really is a provenance luxury bag from the original luxury manufacturer and not a good knockoff. In banking, there are a couple different things we're currently talking about. One is basically starting to use banks as a recovery agent of last resort. If you lose control of your crypto vault, you'd have a bank that would be able to actually get back to where you are and kind of recover from that failure. We're also exploring with some of the small to mid-sized banks the ability to either parallel or replace some of the payment networks that banks are using interbank. So that's where a lot of the real opportunity is kind of the bank-to-bank stuff. But I think the place where end users may see something is the bank recovery tools.
Well, first off, I don't think it's actually true that it's not comparable to like what Solana and the others have. If you do an honest assessment of actual domains of control rather than some nominal like numbers of servers measurement, then their number is lower. You know, with Nakamoto coefficient, almost always more is better. Ours is still good. It's lower than it was before. We would like it to be higher. Our main issue right now has to do with the plot vendors supporting chip 22. So at the moment, GigaHorse is doing something pretty close to chip 22, but it's a little proprietary, and it would be better if they actually supported verbatim chip 22. So it was literally your own farmer that they were talking to, and then or your own full node that it was talking to, and then NoSSD actually expressed interest in chip 22. We built it partially based off requests from them, but they haven't implemented it yet. So if the farmers of the world would let NoSSD know that they would really like them to support chip 22, that would be helpful.
And there's one place where the translation may be a problem here. It is true that if Solana says it's like a 20 Nakamoto coefficient, well, that's 20 validators that cost $4 million each running in data centers. So in many ways, it is not comparable at all. Again, this comes back to like for Solana to make its transactions per second claims that it makes, you have to have something that's not at your house. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah, well, that's two numbers here. There's Nakamoto coefficient, and then there's the number of full nodes, both of which are important benchmarks. But
it's just with proof of stake, those are the validators, right?
Yeah, you don't want to compare our Nakamoto coefficient to their number of validators. Those are two totally different numbers, and number of validators should be orders of magnitude greater than the Nakamoto coefficient. Separate issues here. There's one question, which is what is our Nakamoto coefficient? And the other question is how much energy is being burned in the farming process? And possibly related to that is that itself relating to some centralization, because some people might be advantaged because they have a better GPU setup instead of just having more space. So I think I already answered about the Nakamoto coefficient question. So the real question is energy consumption and excessive advantage for GPU. So what appears to be going on here, and we are continuing to investigate this. We are getting a better understanding of the space of optimizations that people can do here. Basically, all of the optimizations seem to be around bit dropping. So what they're all doing in the asymptotic is you drop the amount of computation you need to use doubles for every bit that you drop. So at some point, it becomes non-economic. You don't go down to zero space. You're still getting some amount of compression, because at some point the trade-off is of negative value to you. You are losing money by making the trade-off of using more computation than space. So it's not catastrophic that way. And also you have to compare apples to apples, that it's possible to get some pretty good compression with a very small amount of computation thrown at the thing. So you have to assume that everyone's doing that small amount. So the real comparison is not against completely uncompressed, it's against totally reasonable amounts of compression. How much do people get? The improvements that people have been getting don't change the asymptotic, they change the practicality of doing it so that you actually can do these things. And I never had the assumption that those practical limitations were somehow like strong theoretical barriers. So it's not catastrophic, but obviously the less trade-offs people can make, the better. Long term, and this is very speculative, very much in the thinking about it, considering it, planning stages right now. Long term, there is a chance that we might want to switch to a proof of space format that is more resistant to compression, now that we know much more, now that people have really been hammering on it, what the compression techniques that actually work are. That's very much in the thinking stages. That's not something we would do without having much more confidence than we do right now about exactly what's going on. And we would never do it without very, very broad community support for such a change. Major hard fork, a very big deal, but this is the kind of thing that hard forks make sense for, because you just can't do them without hard forks. And they are, security related things and really important for the ecosystem as a whole. The general approach that we're considering it's nothing super theoretically astounding. It's basically just, right now we have 7 tables and they're all the same size. So what we might do is something along the lines of up that to 9 tables and make it so that like the first 4 tables are like 1/16 the size of the last 5 tables. Because bit dropping by its nature only really applies to like the very beginning of the whole thing. This would make that type of thing like 1/16 as effective. It would produce a really dramatic change in the amount of compression you got for the amount of computation you threw at it. It still wouldn't be 0, but it would make it so that the rational balance of resources between computation and space was yet even more thoroughly shoved in the space side, with very little on the computation side. That still has Hellman attacks on it. There's a number of things that we are concerned about potential compression techniques. The thing that we were surprised about was these bit dropping approaches, because we'd spent a lot of time thinking about Hellman attacks that no one's implemented so far. Hellman attacks sort of work theoretically a bit better, but because bit dropping is so straightforward, because you can just attack it with GPUs, it in practice works better for what we have right now. With this kind of change, it shifts the balance to Hellman attacks, making a lot more sense. Like I said, I think there's always some amount of computation that just makes sense to do. So in steady state for any proof of space, everyone's doing some amount of compression, but hopefully it's sort of de minimis, and the amount of additional benefit you get for further compression that you throw on top of that is a very losing trade-off very, very quickly. But yeah, this is something we would only want to do with a very, very broad community support and agreement that it's a really good idea. And we're very much in the early stages of thinking about it and researching right now.
The only thing I'd also add, though, is remember, we're not talking about the actual security. We're talking about the efficiency. So, there is no magic, breach to the security level. It's just we would like to keep the balance to storage, not to compute.
Yes. Technically, we do want to make it so that all farmers are on an exactly even playing field. So there's a tiny bit of a security issue there. But yeah, this is primarily a community and greenness kind of a thing, not a security issue. The Nakamoto coefficient is a security issue. So both short answer, yes, it solves the problem. The goal with chip 22 is to make it so that when you are farming, it is you who is farming. You might be using a proprietary plotting provider, but that is sitting on some computer that doesn't even need internet connectivity, hopefully. And you're not worried about it having some kind of security problem. You haven't given it your keys, yada, yada, yada. And you're still making the blocks. So it makes it so that the Nakamoto coefficient is the exact same as it would be if there were no plot providers of any kind. It removes that those things being bundled together. We're perfectly happy with people having with people being plotting providers. We don't want them running a giant proprietary pool, because that's very bad for the network. Very bad for security everywhere. Also, just more stuff for them to run. We believe chip 22 is really good. It doesn't meaningfully change the threat model for anybody, because if people wanted to use a plot provider's stuff without paying them, they could just hack the binaries and not have to do that. Both GigaHorse and NoSSD have expressed interest in supporting chip 22 in the past, but they're kind of dragging their feet on it. So yes, it would be really nice if they would go ahead and demonstrate their community spirit by by implementing chip 22. And it would also be good for farmers who are customers of theirs to let them know they really would like them to implement chip 22 and view this as a factor in what vendor they decide to go with.
Though to their credit, we have not shipped it just yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. We would like to coordinate with everyone on having it implemented everywhere before we really turn it on. So yes. Well, right now I'm in the middle of coding. So it's kind of a big project. There is a repo which my stuff is in that people have noticed activity in it. Probably gonna move it to one of our more main ones. But it's not a working thing yet. It has some tested poker code actually. Right now I'm working towards a milestone of having a coherent tested unit of stuff that doesn't have any deep issues to solve to get it working, at which point it will be ready for other people from within Chia to join the project and really productize it and turn it into a real thing that people can actually run. As far the coding on it right now is the state of it is such that I have of this unit of stuff. I have everything written except for the actual stuff that actually handles state channels themselves. All the stuff that happens inside of channels, all the gaming, that's working, or well written anyway. The goal of the project, so there's several interrelated goals of the project. The nominal goal is to get somewhere with state channels, was the initial motivating goal of the whole thing. The problem with state channels in general, if you have, is setting up a payment channel network is kind of horrible, because not for any technical reason, but because you need real business relationships and real liquidity being ponied up by the routers within the payment channel network. And that's a biz dev problem, it's a biz dev and business and money problem, not a technical problem. So I'm not doing that right now. We're not working on routing of payments at the moment. In order to have something that really makes sense just as a use case being done immediately, we're going after peer-to-peer gaming for real legitimate games of skill for money. This is a big market. The exemplar of it, of course, is poker. And in that market, the features of doing it peer-to-peer, so there's no casino and no rake, are massive, huge things. It means that you can legally do it in a lot more jurisdictions because there are meaningful regulatory distinctions between playing a game for money directly against somebody else versus doing it with an intermediary of a casino. And not coincidentally, also when there's no rake, that means, the players get to keep a lot more money. Like for many people, that might be the distinction between them being a degenerate problem gambler and a professional gambler who's making money. And there's just enough money there that's not disappearing into this hole all the time. So that's like a real market, a real use case that actually does something that's a very, very good fit for this. We can really legitimately do this. So I'm working on that. The other big set of goals for it is really improving ChiaLisp, learning more about writing in ChiaLisp, demonstrating techniques for doing stuff in ChiaLisp, and improving the ChiaLisp language itself. So I've been working directly with Art a lot, going over my code with him, making language feature requests, finding hiccups in things as we go through. And ChiaLisp 23 is really a massive, massive improvement for just a end user programmer on it. My thesis on the whole thing is people keep saying, why don't you support Solidity? It's like, look, Solidity from a standpoint of actually having code that not merely looks like it works, but actually works and works well, Solidity is kind of a nightmare. So we don't want to go there. We want to have an environment that's from the ground up designed to be audited and also designed to be scalable. And it is my thesis that ChiaLisp can actually be made into a totally reasonable language to code in. We just got to make the language more mature so that you can just kind of sit down and get your work done instead of having to learn a whole bunch of arcana of what's going on inside the language. And it really has gotten, I believe by the time I ship this thing, it really will be there. That it has its own, with import, it has basically its own built-in build system now, which is really, really nice to write everything in just one language. It's totally practical to use it to generate itself for off-chain things, because that's a good fit. It's a language designed to write itself. So for applications that need to spit out ChiaLisp to run on chain, those can be written in ChiaLisp as well. And you really can just, once you get used to this worldview of how it thinks about the world, you can really just kind of get your work done in it. And you know, it's just barely getting there now. Import is brand spanking new in it. I just got my stuff moved over to it the other day. But I think where this is going is, you know, when you write in ChiaLisp, you're really thinking in ChiaLisp, not CLVM. It's like a nice high-level language that you're working in. And the thing that's a little unusual that you're dealing with is the fact that it's a very, very pure Lisp with no side effects, and that you are working inside of the coin set model, and you need to think about coin set. But that's in some ways a limitation, in some ways an advantage. We're doing that on purpose. Sticking with the coin set model gives a huge amount of clarity to what's going on. It forces you to think about things, but once it's forced you to think about them, it forces you to handle them properly, unlike things with lots of side effects and lots of rich data sitting around, like, you know, JavaScript, which is basically what Solidity is, where you can have all kinds of implicit things happening that you don't understand what they are and what they're doing. Yeah, so this project I think is going very well. It's been going a little slowly because it's big and ambitious. But my goals right now are to have this thing that I'm working on shipped with a suite of games, and with ChiaLisp itself being a nice mature language to work in, also with some niceties like stack traces coming out of it, debugger working, print working nice and intuitively, and syntax highlighting and VS Code working well. I think that's all going to be out by the end of this year at current trends. Yeah, so over the course of the last year, I believe these all happened in the last year, some highlights of new things in ChiaLisp are there's the assign form, which is really nice in terms of structuring things. There's strict mode, which also, again, is really nice because the compiler gets mad at you instead of doing something truly bizarre when you have typos. Oh, and there's import as well. So you have like a real build system for the whole thing. And it's super nice because things can pull in like the SHA tree versions of other things and calculate the roots and stuff. So when you have something that needs to be like a stable compilation target across multiple things hitting it, that can happen from within the language rather than having to have a build system that's completely external to the whole thing. There's a whole lot of other things. There's like amp rest, there's better captures, there's a lot of stuff in there. But at a high level, it really is getting to be a bit more like, you know, like how you write in Python, that you just sit down and you write your code without having to think about like arcana of what's happening inside of the thing. With the exception that you still have to think about coin set model and currying and things like that. But that's also most of the extensibility and power that you get is because of those things. So it's making you think about those, but then you get the rewards for that as well. So the feedback we got from a bunch of potential validators is they did not like the architecture that we had put together for it. In particular, they didn't want to be just directly sitting on the funds. They wanted something more where there's where the validators are passing messages between the chains, but not holding onto money themselves, and that the bridge itself is a code base written in ChiaList, but is using this message passing architecture. And so Yakuhito actually prototyped something much more along the lines of what is likely more acceptable to a lot more validator runners for it. And we're currently planning on going with that approach. Still need validators. That has not changed.
Though I'd like to point out, we're not choosing the validators. The validators are going to choose amongst themselves to be validators of that. So obviously Yak will be one of those, but we do not have control over that.
Yeah, we're trying to help coordinate and encourage that process.
Yes. So two things. First of all, a good third of that is a loan to the market maker, who is already out there providing liquidity and bringing the bids and asks on our major exchanges much closer together. That's their core role. Our coin sales have had very little to no impact at all on the Chia price, and we wish to keep it that way. The market is absolutely the dominant factor there, and we expect that to continue the pace. I will say this, that past results do not create future outcomes, but most blockchains like ourselves or Bitcoin, with a couple months lag, tend to have a positive price effect with less supply hitting the market.
According to the efficient markets hypothesis, which is perfect in theory, but not in practice, markets are supposed to anticipate things that are telegraphed very, very far in advance and have already adjusted for them. Now, this obviously doesn't always apply, because if you look, for example, of what our price and work difficulty was when we first launched, that was an obviously ridiculously good opportunity to start out farming and sell your coins immediately, right? There was just completely guaranteed returns at that time. So the market is not always perfectly efficient. So it's entirely possible that when our halving happens, it will result in a significant increase in the price. I will say that the farming rewards do two things. They put some downward pressure on the price, and they provide some liquidity. And also the market maker who we brought in is also selling some for us, which is producing a much smaller downward pressure on the price, and doing a much larger amount of providing liquidity. So the importance of the market maker that we've brought in goes up with the halving happening, because there's a lot less liquidity going on. And of course, the downward pressure from our own sales matters yet even less at that point, because the much larger downward pressure of coins going out to farmers is halved. So I'm not terribly familiar with the technical details of that particular project. In general, we don't tell people what to do. They can go ahead and build whatever. Well, our to make sure that the Chia chain remains secure, and that lots of stuff can be built on it. But we are not telling people what to do. Actually, funny story. At one point, I was talking to Casey Rodamer, and I ranted about how dumb it is that in Omni protocol, they don't just go ahead and admit that you just have to run a full node to do it, and just do, colored coins on Bitcoin, the straightforward, easy way, when you just go ahead and admit that you have to run a full node to do them. Because apparently when people want to act as agents of chaos, they come ask me how to do it first. It is possible to mix together UTXO, or the coin set and accounts. You tend to kind of wind up with the worst of both rather than the best of both when you do things like that. Accounts are kind of big and nasty. If you have coin set and they're working well, you should stick with that. I will say that that the cat standard is inherently much more functional than inscriptions are. You just don't. Cats can have smart colored coins that do exactly what you think they do, and their behavior is enforced on chain, and other things that are interacting with them on chain can validate the authenticity of cats, which is something you can't do with inscriptions.
Yeah, I would just add that unlike the Bitcoin world, anyone who wants to build something interesting on the Chia blockchain that causes fee pressure, we support.
Yeah, we're okay with that. There are a lot more things we can do to help alleviate fee pressure in the future. We will do them as they become necessary.
That's right. But I've told others that the thing about fees is it's hard to get from zero to where we are today. From where we are today forward is a much easier road.
Casey is a fun guy. He's a wild and crazy person. I didn't think much of the conversation at the time. Had I known Casey was going to go cause chaos, I would have thought about it more. But I did have a conversation with Casey at one point. I explained cats to him because I like to explain that to people, and I did rant to him about how if you on Bitcoin you can't make cats because it's just not it can't have capabilities. So Chia is very much based off of Bitcoin and just sort of adding the minimalist stuff you need in order to be able to build something like cats. But Bitcoin doesn't yet have such functionality. So the benefit of cats is that something that's on chain is capable of validating the authenticity of a cat token. This is why we can have this is why we can have offers in Chia, because somebody else can pull their thing in and it can say, oh, here's the proof that that thing is a valid cat token, and your thing will accept talking to it. And this is also super, super helpful for things like bridges and stuff like that, where you need a smart coin that's on chain that knows nothing about the outside world. It just knows what it can see in the on-chain state is capable of validating the authenticity of these things. In Bitcoin, you don't really have that functionality. But if you want to have a colored coin, right, where the rules are if you spend it wrong and the chain's not validating your rules, the chain can do whatever it wants. But if you spend it wrong, it becomes bricked. It becomes invalid. You can have that, and you can make it so that it's easy enough to figure out what the state is of the coins. And this can be done using, and the rule, of course, is that you need to be running a full node to do this. You need a full node that can look across the entire history and make this sort of like parallel state of your colored coins in addition to the Bitcoin state, to have this layer on top of it to see what's going on. And this is a totally reasonable way of doing things. Omni does this bizarre Frankensteinian, not really admitting it thing, and it's much, much easier to just do it the straightforward way, which is what Casey went ahead and did. And he did a few other things as well, making these NFT-like things based on identifying particular Satoshis and things like that. So, yeah. But no, this was literally just like a conversation we had hanging out at a Bitcoin devs meetup or something.
So when I joked that inscriptions came full circle, they did. I'll start with the last thing first, which is that it's absolutely for everybody. There are different ways to implement it that are either higher security or lower security, depending on what you're doing, both as a person, the value of what you're trying to secure, or as a business, the needs of the kind of day-to-day operations of how it works. What it really is, and the way to think about it is, it's very similar to how our pre-farm is now locked up. So the pre-farm is a singleton that has certain rules about how you can spend it. And that one is very simple in the sense of it's, if you get 3 people out of the 5, then you can spend something from it. There are other rules about how you can rekey, so you can say, hey, Bram lost his key. If 3 others of us come together, we can replace Bram's key. Instead, when you pick it to the personal or the individual working at a business, the idea is that you'll have your credentials, your capabilities, and your value locked in a vault. And primarily, you're going to use your iPhone or your Android as the core signing device day to day. The kind of like medium security version of this is that, when you click sign in the wallet, what happens is that you get a push notification to the iOS signer that'll open up and show you what you're about to sign with larger details because you got the entire screen. And then you can choose to sign that, and that gets pushed back to your wallet and then presented to the chain. The idea there, if you want more security, you can use a used iPhone and only use QR codes for that. So in other words, you get a QR code from your desktop, you would bring that into the iOS signer app on the iPhone, sign that, it would create a QR code that you bring back to your computer, and that's how it stays completely air gapped. And you're using the secure element to generate these keys inside the iPhone. The secure elements in iPhones and Androids are certainly better than any specific secure element that's been built like Ledger or Tesla's others, just because you've got so many more billions of dollars put on getting that thing right. The idea behind 3 keys is that key number 2 is solving for what happens when you lose your iPhone. So you might have a Tangem or a Ledger, and the only thing it can do, or maybe 1 or 2 things it can do, is rekey in a new iPhone or new Android device. So, you'd lost it, you dropped it in the ocean, you buy a new one, you create a transaction that updates the new one, that has to be signed by your ledger. Now, the ledger also might be able to sign a transaction that like escapes your vault to a new vault, but that new vault is already set. So it's something you created like a backup vault, and therefore, if you're worried that somebody's compromised something, you can kind of emergency escape hatch out. Either way, with it, not the emergency escape hatch, but with the general rekey, if you still have your iPhone and somebody had stolen that ledger and is now trying to key out your legitimate iPhone, it's waking up and telling you, hey, this is going to be complete in an hour. Do you want to cancel it? And so you can use your iPhone to cancel that recovery. And then the third key is, in the personal sense, likely a third-party institution that you can prove that you're you, or that it's your estate or your power of attorney, and therefore they can recover that vault to wherever you specify, but that might take 7 days. And the whole idea there is, if someone like fraudulently convinces the institution to try to recover your funds, you can use your primary or secondary key to stop that. Now, in the enterprise case, that's likely to be like your chief security officer. And so it might be only 4 hours because, it's like you lost both your hard devices, or, the employee died. You can imagine what those kind of use cases look like. But the generic capability that your wallet really lives in an FT that's in the blockchain itself, that these rules are enforced by Chia Lisp, and that you have a lot of flexibility about how to design that kind of set of controls. It makes it so it's like managing a high secure Gmail account. It's 2 hardware devices. And this nice extra, which is a third party who can, only on your request, and even if they cheat, not succeed, recover your stuff too.
Yeah, there's a few things going on here on a technical level. One of them is just supporting the secure element in iOS devices, which we added a new opcode in order to be able to support what the way they sign things. And that's just good stuff in general. It's really easy to intuitively think about a physical device as something that you need to keep secure, as opposed to a password, which is hard for humans to remember, hard to keep track of, and the way you should handle it is much, much less clear. Another part of this, there's 2 other things Gene mentioned. One of them is you can use QR codes. Hooray, yay, we can use QR codes to keep things air gapped. That has some trade-offs. There is some middle ground there. The problem with just using QR codes is that the device can't be, watching the network and giving you alerts when things happen. Although, your desktop could do it even if your phone is signing. Another thing you could do is just use QR codes for pairing it in the first place, and then then you're off to the races. the bigger general feature that's a big feature of Chia in general is the ability to support complex business logic about access and recovery rules of your funds that have full transparency and end user control, which is something I always get really, really excited about and should be the very first thing that everyone goes, woohoo, we can have real custody arrangements that we can totally control is the first thing you get when you get smart money. Unfortunately, that's not the first thing everybody thinks about. The first thing everyone thinks about is generating Ponzi schemes, but it is really, really nice that we could do the thing that actually is really important here.
And we think this is a big business unlock because these are the kinds of tools that you have to truly digitally day-to-day issue carbon, issue debt instruments, all the kinds of things that businesses do.
Yeah, a lot of businesses just simply will not use blockchains if they don't have this general set of type of functionality. Just a total non-starter without it.
No, we actually likely will support a lot of them as other wallets on the vault.
Yeah, Wallet always needs keying material that are doing the signing, and physical things are very convenient for that and good to use.
Is Richard still working for us?
He's on contract, yes. So he's still continuing to do game outreach, and he's got his own consultancy too. So he may actually be involved in delivering that. But yes, he absolutely is out there campaigning for Chia to be used in gaming.
Great, good no, very good no. 我刚刚问就是 Richard 还是
yeah, there's two very different concepts of gaming here. There's these kind of on-chain NFT-ish things, and what I'm working on is real-time things played over channels with most of the action happening off-chain but settled out on-chain. So very, very different projects. Still gaming. But yeah, a different thing.
Everybody, I hope you are having a good start to the new year. I hope that the year of the dragon brings much prosperity to you and your families and your loved ones, as well as the Chia community at large. We're all farmers, and I do feel like at the roots, China has offered so much to the Chia ecosystem by being the largest farming community. I hope you have a good, prosperous new year. And you can follow me on Twitter at GoSpaceport. And you can also learn more about High Performance Chia if you are following me on YouTube. That is digitalspaceport.com and youtube.com/digitalspaceport. Have a blessed 2024, and I look forward to seeing you guys online.
For him.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. It's really exciting to finally be on your channel. Yeah, I'm Dennis, online, mostly just going for DNS, and I'm the founder of Dexy. So I've been into crypto for, well over a decade now, mostly with a trading background. It really kind of took me until Chia to be really convinced that I want to build my own project in crypto. Mostly the consensus and the release of great primitives like cats and offers really convinced me to build something on my own on Chia. So maybe for those who are not familiar with Dexy, still let me kind of explain shortly. So Dexy is essentially an aggregator for Chia offers. So Chia offers are trade proposals. So in your Chia wallet, you would, for example, create something called an offer. So you would specify which assets you request for which assets in return. The cool thing about this is that an offer is basically just a string of text. So you can store it in a file, you could email it to someone, you could post it on social media, but what you can also do is upload it to Dexy, and Dexy will index this file and then display it in some type of order book. So you could call it maybe similar to a limit order on a centralized exchange. This has many advantages. For example, there is no locked liquidity on Dexy. Dexy is only based on offers, and offers can exist on multiple marketplaces at once. This also has the advantage that DEXI is not exploitable. For example, DEXI does not have any smart contracts or anything like that. Another advantage is you don't have to connect your wallet. You can connect your wallet to make things easier, but you don't have to. You can just copy an offer from DEXI to your wallet, or you can copy an offer from your wallet, which you created in your wallet, to DEXI. So it's very secure. And I would argue right now in DeFi, there's nothing better than that. Yeah, so that's why we are building DEXI. And if there are any questions, please go ahead. Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of announcing things before they're actually out, but we're mostly working on just improving the liquidity on DEXI. So, for example, we probably soon will launch a new feature which includes liquidity from other places on Chia, which could be, for example, TBitSwap. And we will combine offers from the order book with the AMM liquidity. So you will have you have a much lower slippage than in most cases using the AMM directly, because we can fill the order up with, we can fill your offer up with liquidity from DEXI's order book. This is what we are working on right now. So obviously that's a good question. So for offers, DEXI cannot take any fees because they are fully peer-to-peer, So there's no chance to take a fee on offers. But what we can do is like provide additional functionality. So what we are doing is, for example, combined offers. So we have the option, the user has the option to select multiple offers on DEXI, and we will combine them. And on this one, we put a fee. And the fee we generate goes into the DEXI's treasury. So this is basically what we are going to do. We provide better functionality for users to handle offers, and on this one we can take a small fee. But I think the easiest would be anyone who wants to invest in DEXI. They can always go ahead and just scoop up some DEXI bucks. This will just be good for everyone, and this is the easiest way. Right now, we don't have any other plans to look for investors. Can you repeat?
新年快乐.
新年快乐.
Yeah, great.
Can you hear me well?
Yes. Fantastic.
Great.
You get off the airplane already?
Oh no, it's in 2 hours. So
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So you have any questions or you want to talk something? Go ahead.
Well, sure. So I have 3 minutes. I'll be quick. I think at the beginning of the year, we didn't have an AMM, and we managed to launch a decentralized application that showed that Chia can indeed have apps like they do on Ethereum, only with a more safe language. I actually check transactions every day. I know we've just crossed 33,000 transactions today. We're on our track to reach 10K Chia volume. That's over $300,000. Yeah, and I wanted to use this opportunity to thank you all, liquidity providers, traders, community members. And I'm really excited for the next year. As Bram Gene have mentioned, I'm working on the bridge, and I also have intentions of launching other projects. So I'm really looking forward to the new year. And to end, I would like to wish you all a happy new year. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Hello everyone. My name is Marvin Quevedo. I am from El Salvador. Within the Chia community, my primary focus lies with Awesome Wallet. Awesome Wallet is a versatile multi-platform Chia wallet designed to empower the users with designless capabilities to transfer Chia, CAT, NFT assets directly or through their respective offers. It's worth noting that we were the first wallet to support CAT, NFT, and offers using the tangent card. With Awesome, our goal is to revolutionize the Chia experience, making it more accessible and more secure for enthusiasts and investors alike. And thank you for the opportunity to be here, and have a Happy New Year.
So Marvin, I have a friend who's like from El Salvador as well. He's like actually in my house right now. Yeah. Like,
And thank you for all.
Bobby, you have a friend from like El Salvador as well. Like one of the water founder.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's a famous chef.
How you doing?
Yeah. Michelin 3-star restaurant chef. Yeah. 米其林3星的一个主厨，26岁。Yeah.
I want to go to the restaurant.
Whenever you want, just come over. Yeah. I got you. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? I think we have. We still have who? John said cannot show up. How about Ben? Name style from name style. Let me see.
They have famously remained anonymous.
I'm with all
Yeah.
of us. Always.
Yeah. I forgot that. They are very famous anonymous. And the Grand Bernard.
Oh, thanks everyone for coming. And Happy New Year.
我说了这么多的，你就是一句话就
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Gene. Happy New Year, Bram. Bram is left, I think.
I'm here.
Okay.
Quiet.
Happy New Year. You can speak Chinese again. 新年快乐. Cannot.
I don't really-
Okay.
More practice next time.
OK. 好，祝大家新年快乐。谢谢大家。
Bye,
拜
everybody.
拜。Take care. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Glad.
这个